because one of the big challenges our country has faced is that policymakers who know the right thing to do run up against walls set up all around them by the lobbyists and the special interests and the defenders of the status quo. And the only way we're going to break out of this trap is by mobilizing public opinion with a clear vision of exactly what is at stake for our country. I think that's my highest and best use in public life.
There is no power like 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for setting the agenda, for drawing attention to it, for moving the country, and for moving Congress. Mr. Vice President, no one knows that better than you do.
Well, that's correct, and I don't dispute that. I'm under no illusion that there's any position with as much influence as that of President, and actually I tried to get that position, but that didn't happen, and so I'm trying to serve in other ways. And you know, I could be wrong about the decision that going back into government is not the right thing to do. I could be wrong, but this feels...
Could you be talked into going back into
No,
government?
this feels like the right thing for me to be doing.
It's Sherman-esque.
Well,
under no conditions would you go back into government.
General Sherman famously said, if nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. I already ran. I'm not running for the. I didn't run for the nomination, and I've already been elected and didn't serve.
There's no way that you could go back
Joking about that.
with or without the help of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Well, I do not. I mean, I made a decision in this past election cycle for the nomination and the one before that not to be a candidate again, and I'm comfortable with the fact that what I'm doing now is of use. I am going to continue having these so-called solution summits all over the country, meeting with engineers and scientists and CEOs and people who are actually hard at work building these new renewable energy systems. And you know, if you go out and talk to the people who are in the laboratories and who are putting these new systems into place, actually building them, the debates on Capitol Hill are really kind of out of date in the sense that the new, more efficient and cost-effective renewable energy options are very exciting, and they're ready to use, especially since coal and oil are continuing to go up in price.
Let me ask you about your attitude toward politics these days. I was a little surprised. You're a man who was in politics at the highest level in this country, in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, vice president for 8 years. And yet you said recently, what politics has become requires a level of tolerance for triviality and artifice and nonsense that I have found in short supply. Is that the right kind of signal to send to the young people of this country who, more than any time in recent memory, are deeply involved in the political decisions that we're making this year, and young people who want to get into the political arena look to Al Gore and he said, it's all about trivia and nonsense?
Well, no, that quote you used was about my own personal tolerance for, bear in mind, I was in the political process for almost 30 years, and no, I encourage young people to get involved. And public service is an honorable calling, and I'm very excited, by the way, about the fact that millions of young people who haven't been involved in the past are now getting involved, many of them for Senator Obama, of course. And I think that's exciting. I do think, Tom, that we have a very serious set of problems affecting our democracy. The role of big money, the role of lobbyists, the role of special interests. It's a very serious problem for our democracy. I think that the new internet-based forms of organizing and mobilizing people, and that's what's gotten a lot of these young people involved, offer a real ray of hope. I'm optimistic, but I think my best role is to try to help that come to pass and to focus on enlarging the political space so that we can start focusing on real solutions and not these gimmicks.
With all due respect, Mr. Vice President, I can already hear your critics, and I don't do Rush Limbaugh, so I will not attempt to. But I can hear him saying on radio, well, there's Prince Albert. There he was, 25 years hanging out with lobbyists, raising big money. And then he lost, and now he's above the process. He finds it trivial and nonsensical.
I'm not saying I'm above the process. I was in it for a long time. And when I first was elected 32 years ago, I called for full public financing of every federal election. I introduced legislation and proposed that every year I was in.
And your guy Obama has turned it down. He said he was for public financing. and now he's decided to stay in the private sector.
Well, there's a new reality now with the internet-based small donor playing the dominant role. And I think that's another example of how the internet has helped to bring about some positive changes that can give us a way to break the back of the special interest dominance that we have in government today.
Let me ask you about your personal lifestyle, because it's been the subject of a lot of dialogue on the blogs. As you know, you and Tipper bought a big home outside of Nashville, and you had it retrofitted. But for a time, there was a comparison between what the president has in Texas at his home as being more environmentally correct than your home. The Building Green Council gave you its second highest award. But Stephen Smith, who is with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, is troubled by the scale of your home. He said, we all need to evaluate what we need in square footage, present company included. We all have to look at scale, don't we? Why was it necessary for you to have a 10,000 square foot home? Because that is going to be more energy intensive than a smaller home for just the two of you.
Well, I don't claim to be perfect, and all of us who care about this issue are trying to do our part. But I will say this, we buy green energy. The issue is carbon. The issue is carbon. And we have essentially a carbon-free home. We buy from wind energy and solar energy. Our roof is covered with solar electric panels, a geothermal system with all these deep wells, and we cut our natural gas bill by 90%. And we're walking the walk and not just talking the talk. There are always people who are going to try to aim at the messenger if they don't like the message, and I don't claim to be perfect, but we are walking the walk.
How often do you fly in a private jet?
I've much more frequently on public transportation. I'm flying on Southwest Airlines again today, but sometimes the schedule requires that, and sometimes I do that.
Should there be a surcharge on jet fuel costs for private aviation, which is expanding exponentially in this country, and it leaves a very large carbon footprint?
Fine by me. Sounds like a good idea.
Let me ask you as well about what's going on in Congress right now. There's a big debate underway about whether we should have offshore drilling. And Kent Conrad, a Democrat from North Dakota, whose credentials no one has to question within his own party, is leading a bipartisan effort to have offshore drilling. He comes from a small rural state where energy costs have had a big impact on everything from agriculture to the shop owner on Main Street. Why shouldn't there be, in a transition period, more drilling offshore with the technology that we now have that has demonstrated in almost 50 years that we've not had any kind of a significant spill off the coast of this country?
Well, we already have offshore drilling in the areas where it does make sense, and there are already leased lots and lots of other offshore sites that could be drilled in. There's a shortage of drill rigs and engineers, and they're going full out now. But the areas that are protected now are protected for a reason. The coastal economy has been hurt in the past by oil spills, and I think states like California should have the right to protect the areas that they know are in danger. But the larger point is this, Tom.
But if Florida approves it, do you think that they should be allowed to drill?
I think that the areas that have environmental values and economic values connected to the environment at stake should be protected. And the larger reason why is, even if they went in that direction, everybody acknowledges it would have zero impact on gasoline prices or oil prices. It's a drop in the bucket that would pose high risk to very important values. It wouldn't even start until 10 or 15 years from now, and would likely be sold to China anyway. And going back over and over and over again to the old ways of the past just puts off the reckoning with the opportunity that we need to seize now to shift over to renewable sources of energy. People used to propose cures for hangovers by having what they call the hair of the dog that bit you, just more in the morning. Well, we've got a big hangover right now because oil is so high in price, so much of it comes from overseas. The climate crisis is really the heart of this. This is no joke, Tom. You said in your intro that there's some debate about how real it is. There's really not a debate in the mainstream scientific community. It is the most serious threat that our civilization has ever faced. But look at the fires out in California right now. Look at the epic flooding in the Midwest. Look at the stronger storms and all predicted. The entire North Polar ice cap, Tom, been there 3 million years. It's the size of the lower 48 states. And the scientists now say that there's a 75% chance it'll be completely gone during the summer in as little as 5 years. This is happening on our watch. We have got to respond.
Well, the indication that I gave at the beginning was not that it's not real. I think that there is a growing and vast majority of people who believe it's real. The question is, to what degree and how quickly is it coming, and what can we do about it? I think it's fair to say that even within the scientific community, there's a debate about that, because I've been tracking this issue pretty carefully.
Well, I mean, I think there's a consensus now that it's happening even more rapidly than the scientists were telling us years ago. We're seeing record high temperatures. 9 of the 10 hottest years ever recorded have been in the last couple of decades.